Okay, so the morning got away from me. I feel like the whole day is going to. We are going to get like 4 or 5 inches of snow here. We are going to, hang on, make sure this works right. There we go. And it's about 5 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, which is around 20 degrees below Celsius, below zero. So it's surprisingly cold out for snowing. And as such, my daughter doesn't have school, and so she's home. And actually, they've canceled school for the rest of the year, which was just 2 more days. But still, it sounds like a lot the rest of the year. One of the fun things about getting to this time of year. So anyway, just mopping up, keeping the house on fire, or off of being on fire from everyone going crazy here, and cleaning up a few other projects, and then trying to get back into some streamable content. So last week, and this is up on YouTube now, Justin has made the jump to getting our videos uploaded to YouTube, so you can still watch content another time. Anyway, we left off last week saying, okay, can we use this spec in Chrome to make some custom ways to format objects? And first we needed some boilerplate because we have to render HTML in the particular way that Chrome wants it. You can't just send it HTML strings, you have to send it objects of stuff. And then we have to implement a particular API, this JavaScript API here. And you have to implement these methods, and you have to hook up your implementation to say, hey, I want you to render this stuff. Turns out we have to have it rendered in 2 different places. Excuse me. It doesn't quite hook up properly on its own. And we had some concerns about console.log not doing things that we expected them to do. So for example, it doesn't seem to render expandable objects. So when we say, hey, let's, where's my setup call? Here we go. We build some objects with some interesting structure, terrible structure if we're honest, and then we call log on it. It is going to just give us an unexpandable object. But if we actually debug it, so if I replace this with a js.debugger, we'll be able to pause here and examine the object and take a look at it. So that worked a little bit better. And then we've got some custom formatters that we built here. These names are just terrible. This is just the general Java. This is the Java implementation of the JS API. And then we have a GWT specific. Here is, can you render it? Do you opt into rendering this? And then if so, how will you render it? And we made a couple of specific implementations. We've got an array renderer that says, oh, okay, I can't handle JavaScript objects, but I can handle plain Java objects and all of the primitive array types. And then given any one of those, we will say, hey, what my component type was and my and just show that it's an array, and then we will give it the length for debugging. If there's contents, we allow it to be expanded, and then right now we do an ordered list to show the contents. So it doesn't look like a regular array when it actually renders, because you see 1, 2, 3, so we've got 1 indexed content, which is irritating. Yeah, and there's no easy automatic way to say, hey, just render it as numbers instead. So that's what I'm going to play with today, see if there's some other ways we can say, hey, append some object and just stick it in there as keys effectively. And then a map renderer, which is going to say, hey, here's my key, here's my value, and then list was easy enough. And then a boxed primitive renderer, we had to say, okay, these things here, these boxed primitives, we can't just render them as their own self. We have to, because those will be objects with just a field holding the value. We have to instead unwrap them. And we found what may be a bug in GWT, where if you take a boxed primitive and call toString, it renders it as a Java object. I'm sorry, as a JavaScript object. So it just puts, your square braces object, which is of course how you want to see an object turned into a string in JavaScript. So instead we have to explicitly unbox before we run this. Not really sure what's going on there. This may be a GWT specific thing. It may be a bug because the particular program we're running here is so tiny. Anyway, it's going to take some messing around to figure that out. Let me poke something here on the streamy stuff, make sure that's all working. Oh, hey, I've still got Justin's stream title. Well, that's not what I meant to do. Edit stream info. Home custom object formatters. Okay, there we go. That's the stuff we need there. And then let's mute some other stuff going on here. Okay, yeah, where were we? All right, so yeah, there's no body for this. It's always empty, and we've always got no children. Anyway, so that's as far as we got so far. We need to next think about how to render some of our other Java objects that are not collections. Simple collection seems easy enough. We probably want to replace this list one instead of just instance of list with instance of collection, and then iterate through and display the contents however we can. But first, we got to get rid of that darn OL. So that's the main thing we got to handle there. Okay. Yeah, let's fire it up because it's been a couple days since I was running this. I wasn't using super dev mode last time. I was for a little while. There was something funny that happened with it. I can't remember what the issue was. So let's just get this going and grab a browser tab that I can drag on over. I was having some issues with the Chrome debugger. And so I figured out how to use the Chrome debugger to debug the debugger, but I never really got anywhere with it. Let's get this DevTools open, and then we'll go to localhost 8000, target. There we go. So it renders as ArrayList 6. It did not stop on the breakpoint, and we are still getting this, hey, formatter failed, cannot find, uncaught, and then in quotes, basically, cannot find context with specified ID. Now, there's no actual useful rendering thing here to say what happened or what's the stack trace or what blew up. And we don't get breakpoint stopping correctly inside of that formatter when invoked like this. But if we do it like this, we now get a little expandy thing. Okay, that didn't actually expand properly. So let's try. If I do that, can I say, hey, what's the value of data? Is that a watch here? There we go. So now this is still not expandable. Oh, you jerk. All right. Let's make sure that debugger didn't get compiled out from in here. Yeah, it did. How about that? Right here. It should have been right after that. So either something got cached, or it's just going to be a jerk and not render the debugger properly. No, I'm pretty sure it's just being a jerk. It's just not going to do that for me. So we'll put an assert false instead. That generates, if you have assertions enabled, it generates a breakpoint. So instead of just this stuff here, we're also going to say compiler args enable assertions. So now our production JavaScript will have assertions enabled. It's going to take a moment to restart here. There we go. Here's a debugger. Okay, so it's just going to unconditionally debug and then throw an exception, and now we can expand this. Aha! Okay, so now we've got this nice little pop-up here showing our debug information. So that works as expected. Why does it not render it like that over here? Oh, it does. Okay, so that one expands nicely. Again, we've got one index data here. That's irritating. Here's a hash map with 2 objects in it. We don't really want them rendered as objects. We want each rendered as value equals object. And value, the first value here, if we look at our Java real quick, this was just to make things, debuggable. Here's a map inside of itself. And then the second option is the map's key is a list and the value is a string. So this first one is just absurd for the sake of, can I do it? And the second one is the key is an array list and the value is a string. So that pretty nearly is useful the way it's debugged. These entries are really irritating, so we actually want to append some custom entries here, some custom, hey, it's a map entry. Let's render it like that instead. So we'll try that out. And ideally, we also go back to this formatting here, where the little expandy thing is over here instead of like this one here, where these are on the other side of the number. So if you look at a regular array, let's look at a regular array and what that looks like. Did it not add to the scope? It did not add to the scope, you jerk. Make a new watch expression. A. Nope, not alert. Just A. There we go. So if we expand this, oh, this is a bad example. But anyway, it's 0 indexed, first of all, which is how we wanted it. And then we want to say, let's make one of these into an object where it's something like A:ASDF. And now we see that the little caret is on this side of the tree, which is really where I want it instead of this side. So the styling is also different. So there's something that Chrome is doing that so far either we don't have access to or we haven't figured out how to access. There's not a lot of documentation on this feature, how it's meant to work. I can pull up a little bit we do have, which is mostly in the form of a Google Doc. Written by Googlers, of course, you know, and the full spec here, last updated in 2016, is you can get it in your console. It doesn't seem to work in the console, whatever. You can do it in your watches, scopes. Okay, that works properly. And the pop over while debugging, yes, that definitely works. Some examples, but none of them are runnable, because why would you need that? And then they show you how to render it, but there's missing details like you can return null. What happens if you return null? Does it continue on to the next one? Nobody knows. And you can never return null from this one. You have to return empty instead. What does empty mean? In JSON-ML, empty means, let me pull up the JSON-ML stuff. JSON-ML is, what if you take an array and the first element is a tag name, the second element is attributes, and all the other elements are children. Child elements. It doesn't say anything about objects in there. It just says that there should be elements in there. As far as I can tell, it doesn't say anything about objects. We've got the element list here. It just shows up after that, which an element should be one of these things here or a string. But in this extension, instead of Chrome, you can also put just plain old objects in there as elements. And that's allowed instead. So maybe we switch over to that. Maybe we try to either rendering different, more complex content, or try going to simpler and simpler content to see if that gets us to where we need to be. Anyway, this is all we have to work with. We have no OL. Technically, this allows it, but the spec here says you only have OL and LI. We don't have UL. We have tables, so we can render some nice tables. And I have seen people putting very complex CSS to render little graphs. Do I have one of those open here? See, it's been a little while since I was puttering with this, since last week. This is a GWT specific one. Not seeing it right now. I will pull that up. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So this is kind of fun, that it can render some sort of dynamic content. I don't think it can actually read updates from the DOM as they happen, or from your application. But it does show them working in the console. Console.log rendering this, but not necessarily expanding it. So we'd have to look at that to see what they're doing. So if we look at the source real quick for how this works, yes, thank you. You're very, very helpful. We've got view styles that they just make into a big string. Circle style, which is, I guess, a gigantic radius thing. And then I don't know how the arrow style works yet. Let's take a look. Okay, here's the vector. We rotate it. So we just turn the thing, but give it a specific width. And then I'm not sure yet how it's animating. This does give the impression that it's returning plain content. And I'm still not sure how it updates it. I can't imagine this is an actual React component that's going to get new values constantly because we're returning arrays. So there's somewhere in here that's going to take this JSX format and turn it back into, I guess, React, and then draw it. But we need to go from React all the way back to this JSON ML. And that isn't obvious to me how they're making that work. Oh, there's a plugin, JSX to JSON ML. Okay, so it skips over the React thing. It's not actually doing any binding, it's just rendering that. And then it's something about the rendering is able to say, hey, this value should change here. Oh, you know what it's doing? This is consecutive renders. So it renders log, 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 and it basically just logs them so fast you get your new frame showing up. Well, that's, I mean, it works, but that's weird. It's cool that it works. I guess you can really do lots of crazy things with it, but I don't know. Anyway, could be fun. So let's get back to here and try a little more experimenting around rendering. This is the Firefox window, so it won't work in there. Try rendering plain arrays. If we just pass an array instead of plain old objects, was my next thought there. So we go back to the list formatter and say instead of an OL with a bunch of LIs in it, what if we just had a whole bunch of objects? Made some top-level empty thing, and then appended a whole bunch of stuff. So I made these little factory method here. It looks like a factory method, but it's marked as native, which means, hey, go call the browser. And I've got it wired up to say this just calls the of method in the browser, and since I pass no arguments, it's always a new empty array. So that's an easy way to create a new array that's called empty instead of. And then we could probably just append some things to it. So let's give that a try real quick. And then instead of appending an LI directly, we're going to append the object to it. Let's grab that content. We're going to leave that little note there because that was to myself to say, should you be doing this? Is this a problem? Is there something beneficial we're going to get out of doing that? Like, does name actually have some real benefits there? What's the problem here? Of has private access. Did I say of? I meant empty. All right, so let's just check our list. The only thing we should have changed is the array list, which is this top level thing here. And we want to rewrite this also to do all collections that way. And then I was thinking we could make maps not render as a map, but as a collection of entries, and then make each entry render as a pair of some kind. Now, this is not an original thought, lest you imagine for a moment that I'm amazing. No, this is from Rocco's original entry. He had a specific mapper for entry. And he wrote this to say, here, I'm going to make you wrap up in a key and a value, go reference those things. But there's a lot of this hey, I know what the generated code is going to be, and the other code will never change. So this is our approach is much better because it's telling the compiler, hey, actually compile out my formatter along with your project as it goes. And then it just builds a single array, which is what we were hoping might have been the right answer. And then I guess it's got a length and a name and a value. Not really sure what's happening there. We'll figure that out. Let's see here. Here's our array list, which now starts off the same way. It's an array list size of 6, and then it blows up. Broken formatter, object, element, object, not allowed. So it is saying, hey, you were supposed to give me some real stuff. Instead, you gave me an object in the first thing, and then an object in the second thing, which it's supposed to be an object in the second slot, but not that one, I guess. So retrieve object entries. This is how the original implementation came together. Why can't I shrink this? There we go. I guess this is a helper function that's going to build a big array, and it's going to append to it for each item. It's going to say grab each item in it, make a wrapper, which is key and value. It's going to assign some internal type for some reason, and then it's going to push that as the value of with some name here, and the name is the index basically. So that's a little weird. Just going to see if there's any other hints in here that we can go off of. Returns that. Okay, so children must be as a method invoked by something that will iterate through and do stuff. Right, so here's where it's grabbing children. It's grabbing each child. It's making an li for it, so it's putting it in a ul. We don't want to mess with that. That's not worth it. We've already done that. You know, you get your one indexed content instead of your zero indexed content. So, all right. So that didn't work. Let's try something else. What if we just made like a single object wrapper for this stuff? And then just appended a whole bunch of objects to it? Like we said, okay, just start with a div. And then inside of that div, directly append the object. We still got this empty object here that we're going to have to figure out later, but that's, you know, later's problem. It would be nice to get super dev mode working for this, and this, again, this is Gwt too. It looks, all this JS interop, and completely avoiding any JSNI makes it look like it's Jackal, but really it's just applying modern approaches of writing stuff. Okay, so this is still terrible, because we lost even our indexes. We can't render array indexes. What if we put them into an array before appending it to the div? What do we say? Empty? Maybe it will recognize that a plain JS array has some structure that it should respect. And so we're just rebuilding it to say, hey, here's the structures you recognize, and here's the structures you don't recognize. All right, so here's the array list, and it blew up. Unbroken formatter object is not allowed. Okay, so we're back in that territory of it says, well, you passed me an array, therefore the array must be an object, but instead of an object, you gave me garbage. That's not great. This one still works, of course, and this one's going to break as soon as I get into here. In the same way. Yep, as soon as you expand it, it breaks. See, now it thinks it can expand it. It wasn't doing it before, and this version up here is not expandable. And it's still got this funny error at the top. What if I say console log? See, now it's expandable. Sometimes when you call console log, not expandable. Sometimes it is expandable. All right, I don't get it. Okay, so we can't just make arrays with stuff. They have to be something else. So this is the idea that we had here to say, what if instead of JS object of, we did something like JS property map of, and then we say key I. So we saw the use of key in a couple of places to say this has some other importance to it. Maybe that will let us do something here. Create property preview. This must be specific to object formatter here. This is commented out. It just grabs these and builds them into one simple object. Let's look at one of the other examples out there. Let's try this real quick now that it's back up again. Nope, it still is not happy. Oh, because I left the array in there, because I'm a jerk. right. Let's just see if we can find anybody else who's got some examples of this. I'm sure they've got the spec in here somewhere. The array doesn't exist by default, so we need to create it. This is the same things we had before. An element list represents the content. In this case, it's a string. It could be another could be more content. As body returns true or false to represent our content. Formatter body. Okay, so this is their data that they're going to examine. And then they have a thing here. So this is where they start making some keys. When you call the header or body function, you get a config as its argument. And sometimes they use that to say, hey, should I do something special here? If it is a backbone model formatter, then chunk the key in there. If it's not, return null, which means it's someone else's problem. Otherwise, return this top-level backbone model with property. So we see backbone model with property on the top level, but we don't see it in the children because it just displays the keys in those cases. So config.key is the context of how you got into that child. Then the body in each case is, okay, if it's an instance of model, then don't worry about the object itself. Reassign it to just get the attributes. Then we make a bunch of elements for each key in the object. So note we're not looking at the config yet, if at all. We grab each key. We read out the value. If it's an object, then we just return this funky syntax here, which makes it look like it is a... Oh, I see. That's how you say it's an object. So maybe we need to actually append the array as an object? Is that what we did in append object? Yeah, we make a special element called object that has the object as a child. Okay, so that might work. Before we try this key garbage, well, let's try the key garbage real quick. It's going to fail. I'll bet you nickel. Map. Well, it's not terrible. Hash map array list short. Oh, and it just spammed in the other things at the end of here. That's weird. It should be 3, and then the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the number false. So it just concatenated those directly. That's weird. Okay. All right. So the key, I'm not sure the key really did anything. It just appended things directly to it. Let's back up here and put the array back, except this time we'll make the array be wrapped append object. Now we say array, because it's just an array. It needs no longer be a JSON markup, but that's what we've got so far. And then object.create null. Create null, by the way, is how you say, hey, make an object that has no keys whatsoever in it. Even the built-in keys that the object class would provide for you. So this hopefully says, I've got an array of these things, render it as an array with the children actually in it. That's the idea. All right. Array 6. Okay, so that's irritating that it shows the array right there. But then it does get our actual children in here, but with this object wrapper. So maybe we don't want the object wrapper. We just want to directly append the object itself. But then it says, okay, so this is an object hash map. It's no longer rendering it as a hash map. Oh, the object field has the hash map. Got it. Which is 2, and then got children. Okay, so that's not terrible. Let's switch it up to a JS array of, I don't know, objects. And now the object can get appended there, and then we can just push each of these here. We don't need that content. We'll just leave that note there for later. If this works, then we're just gonna leave it as is. So now it's a div holding an array of our stuff. So all we did here is we said call list.get to get each child. It's almost like we'd rather replace the head function but not the body function of an existing array. And of course, that indirection to say, okay, don't pay attention to the array list object, pay attention to the children of the array list object. Yep, so it's still got this extra nested element, but then inside of here in position 0, it's got a hash map. Good. Yep, it's got each of these things in the right position now. So we can probably do the same for primitive arrays to get them to show up nicely with this indexing here, except it'll have one extra wrapper to say, hey, I'm an array. And that extra wrapper is kind of junk to have to do that. It would be nice to say just display the body that you would have displayed for an array. Don't display an extra layer here. I kind of want to wonder if we could just replace the header code with, hey, just make the whole thing. Just try that. Still has a div wrapper. I really want this to be the object itself. So now it shows it as an array. Except the head is wrong. Well, that is pretty close to useful. By just returning the default, by just returning a plain old object, it's got this little bit of indenting, which is funky. And we'd like it to actually note, hey, I'm an array list. I wonder if we can change its constructor's name or something? And get it to say it's an array instead. I'm guessing this is a custom formatter built in to the Chrome code base. If you were looking for the Chrome debug tools JS, it's not GitHub. They got their own Garrett, don't they? Let's pull up VS Code here. I said, pull up VS Code here. Really? You're not going to launch VS Code for this? Okay, fine. You're a jerk. I'm wondering where they keep their formatters. I'm guessing they're in here. Just a moment, please. Yeah, no, it's not going to be in there. I was hoping for some obvious, I'm a formatter. And I was also hoping for this dot keystroke. Oh, it's because I'm not signed in this one here. 1 second, I'll pull this off screen and go sign in. Let's switch to this screen. I'm just not signed in Chrome. Now I'm going to do the authentication dance here to get that right. Watch me not say this number out loud. I don't type them without saying them out loud. Okay. But hang on, we're going going to go ahead and not show that part of the screen. Okay, so let's see if now I can get it to load up Visual Studio Code so we can actually debug, not debug, but search the whole code base without checking it out, because who wants that? We're going to look for the magical string that got this started. So for those of you who don't know, if you hit the dot period key in a GitHub repository, it opens Visual Studio Code in your browser. No need to actually install the darn thing. Let's see here. Register has these little constants here, DevTool formatter. So we're going to search across the whole Chrome DevTools code base for DevTools formatters. What do you think? Are we going to get something? We could look for like has body next. I don't want you to install recommendations. This exceeds the download size limit. Go for it. I don't use Chrome anyway. So I guess it downloads the whole repository in order to index it, and then it indexes it locally. That being said, it does it in the browser, and it does a pretty good job of it. So, okay, no mention made of DevTools formatter, so I guess that's not implemented in the DevTools front-end repository. The other thing we want to look at here is the hasBody method, just to see if anybody ever defines a hasBody. Yes, there is a hasBody parameter. This doesn't look like it's specific to our what we're trying to work with here. And body parameter is an array. Yeah, I don't think that's it. This looks like it's specific for closure. Here we go. Formatter has body. If a formatter returns true as a result of has body, then body getter ID will contain remote object ID with a function that returns the result of formatter body object config call. The result value is a JSON ML array. Getter ID. So this is the formatter junk, anyway. Protocol. Is this just the whole protocol? This looks like a huge file. Yeah, we're 16,000 lines into the file. But I think this is this a DTS or is this just the actual thing? It says .ts. So I'm guessing it's just plain TypeScript. Runtime domain exposes JavaScript runtime by means of remote evaluation and mirror objects. Evaluation results are returned as mirror objects that expose object type, string representation, and unique identifier that can be used for further object reference. I'm really looking for how does this get invoked and used. Okay, so custom preview, I guess, just boils down to this. Remote object ID. We should see how that's defined. It is an opaque type of this stuff here. Okay, so maybe not helpful after all. Maybe see who uses custom preview. I guess this is if it has a custom preview or not. I was kind of hoping that they sort of dog-fooded this to implement their own formatting. Object preview type. Let's see, where is this reference, this enum? So maybe we can just say, hey, go and grab this thing here, render it as a, see, there's no array in here. Object preview subtype, okay, array is there. Object preview. There's another array. Property preview subtype. Okay. Doesn't look like there's any actual code in here. Let's go in closer to the top and see if there's more than just types in here. If there's any actual implementation stuff, or if we've got to trace our implementation through other classes. Boy, there's a lot of stuff in here. This file is auto-generated. Do not edit manually. So that at least implies to me that we can get some of these things from other files. Unless, okay, here's a JSON for it. Here's a PDL. What's a PDL file? Is this generated by the JS or vice versa? This domain is, yeah, that's not what we're looking for here. 1.3, so I'm guessing this is used to generate the TypeScript. Okay, that's closure junk. This is just the JS map for the closure file, I guess, or some other file. So I guess nothing actually consumes and invokes has body in here. Maybe we look at the protocol, see how that works. There's PDL again. Yep, here we are again. PDL, the preview, it's the same files. There's nothing new in here. Let's see here. At this point, we're getting to years old, so that's probably not what's happening here. So it's probably in Chrome itself that we're going to find this. Let's see here. We want the actual repo. I just want to look at the content. Like that. The repository is empty. Okay, well, that's not it. Let's see. Chromium starts with C, so maybe we're going to jump ahead here a little bit. All right, Chromium. Browse. There's build tools, there's dependencies. Let's just look ahead real quick just to see if there's something else specific to Chromium. Like, here's the dev tools. Chromium dependencies. Okay, that's a lot of Git repos just for dependencies. This is why nobody likes to build Chromium. If you ever tried it, just consider doing other things instead with your life. At the time when I was there, Sencha had a whole team that was keeping track of what was then WebKit and maintaining their own. Why is Chromium source a different thing than Chromium? This is going to be a headache, isn't it? Please tell me there's just a directory in there. Or did I click on the wrong thing? Chromium source, build tools. How about dev tools? C, components, dbus. Yeah, we skip right past dev tools. There's source out. Why is there a source out? It's like each directory is like its own Git repository. Yeah, that's what it's like. You can't go up a directory from this because this exists to allow source files generated to a Chromium build to be indexed by code search, so they check in their generated code. You do not need to clone this repository, and it's not used in a build. Okay, fine. Let's go back up to source and see if there's anything that looks like DevTools in here. Device docs. Gin is apparently in there. That can't be the same gin that we use. Yeah, it's not. UI? Is UI counting as dev tools? Not so far. This is quickly becoming hopeless, but I'm just wondering anyway. Tools. Is dev tools a tool? Determinism, diagnosis, disable tests. Linux, Mac. I need a full repository search, except it's across so many repositories that's almost definitely not going to make sense. Let's go back to scanning these real quick again. Debugger or dev tools or something like that. All right. Yeah, I guess nobody is enthralled by wandering through Google's Garrett repository so slowly either. Tools are almost certainly tools to generate stuff as opposed to dev tools. So it's probably more part of the UI itself instead of Chrome DevTools front end. That looks useful. I'm guessing this is the same repo that's in. It's just it's Python. The DevTools front end is serve static assets. Okay. So it's not the actual DevTools themselves. Yeah, fine. It's too good to be true. Docs is now here. All right, well, this is going to be a waste of time, so let's just stop it now. Let's go back to saying, well, what if we rendered a good object here? Let's refresh this real quick. We've got an array. So we lost the array list heading here. That's unfortunate. But maybe we could mangle the array in some way to say, hey, I want you to use this name instead, but I really want to get you to index in these objects here. This is an array list, and it's useful. And this is an array list, and it's useful. So that kind of idea. And this is not an array list. So it starts at 1. And the way we got that so far was we said, okay, what if we just render the whole array up front? We just rewrap the array. We could probably also just say something like object.toArray, and then do a little quick casty magic here. And then avoid the copy. Still not going to rename the constructor. We wouldn't want to mangle that underlying array's constructor. Actually, it is going to make a new copy. ToArray makes a copy. I mean, it has to, right? It's not going to return a view on it or something. If we look at array list inside of GWT, ToArray clones the array. Array helper is a GWT specific thing, which will take that and it will slice it, and then it will stamp the array information back on it again. So it still is making a clone, which is not what we want to do. Okay, so we get to restore it back to our loop. It wouldn't really save us anything. But it seems to have put our old read back here again. What did I do wrong? Oh, because it's a Java object array. Because it's got the type information on it. So this is detecting it as a Java array. Okay, we got to put it back. So now that we've made a new one, is there something we can do to mangle that array format to change the name as far as DevTools is concerned? So let's think about that. If you make an array in JavaScript, right, array.constructor is constructor is the array itself. If we reset that to something like that, now array is, nope, I don't want it to autocomplete. I just want you to log, dang it, I just want you to log the word array, the object array. Now it's a constructor. That's weird. Array 0. Okay, so that didn't change the name of it. It still recognizes that it's an array, but now it's got a funny constructor. So we have to say, no, 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 I actually want this text to change here. And where does that come from? What property of array says, here's what its name is? This is going up the constructor. Why are you tabbing in and not auto-completing? What is wrong with you? Okay, so that's another one of those. Equals. Yeah, no. Didn't change it. Constructor is there, and now the constructor of the prototype is there. I think I may have just reassigned all of array to be this new constructor type. Let's just see what these changes did real quick. Array of 6 has these other things in them, still doesn't have a nice name on it. So we want to say that this div here somehow needs the text to say, hey, I'm actually representing, otherwise it'd be as array. Yes, that's true. Yes. The browser knows how to render this array. We want it to use its body rendering for that, but not its header rendering. That's the problem. And in fact, we don't even want the body rendering because this length 6 is, I guess it's okay. It's already rendered up here, and the prototype is not something that's going to be helpful to the average user, unless we could change it to class or something. So the real question is, how are they getting this nice formatting in here with the numbers? Is that a thing we can hook into, or are we just completely stuck here? If I go back to my array here, A, and then we change this here to be just the word A. Nope, not alert, A. Please don't autocomplete, that's wrong. So this has the expand icon to the left of the 3. Say expand that thing and goes like this. Great. Fantastic. That's lovely. But here it has the expands to the right of it, because it basically says, I know you're some other object. So I think we are out of luck. As soon as you touch the formatters, you can no longer make it look like a normal array. And as soon as you get 0 indexed anything, you're pretty much screwed too. So I'm wondering if this is some kind of a custom thing here, that this counts as a single object where they style this differently. Let's get dangerous here, shut all the other tabs, and try using DevTools to debug DevTools. So I'm going to open a new Chrome window and go to, what's it, about debugger? Remote debug. How do you do this? Remote debugging. Chrome? Yeah, sure. Chrome inspect devices. It's not actually inspect devices. It's one of the other tabs. Pages. Extensions? No. Other? Here we go. Other. Okay, so this is gone. This is gone. We're trying to inspect the debugger for this. Nope, that's where it is already. This one? Oh, it's opening new tabs for me. Test.js and background.js. What the hell is this? Somebody's got an alphabet in there. CRC. This might be some other plugin I've got installed, like IntelliJ. Kind of looks like Chromium, though. TamperMonkey. It's probably TamperMonkey itself. Okay, so that's not helpful. Maybe it's one of these? Nope. Maybe. Storage for frame. So are we actually debugging? Let me see if I can click in here and say, what is this? Oh yeah, we can. Okay, so now we got DevTools for DevTools. We can debug the debugger. What I really want to see is how is it styling these things here? And is that something we can just rip off? It's like that number 1. What the heck is that? Let's bring this up so I can see both at the same time, please. All right, you're going to be a jerk. Fine, whatever. Go over there. So you can see over here, right, the number that we're debugging, and we can see over here the DOM. Let's break this down. Span name own property. Okay. Here's name and value as a parent for that. They do use LIs. And then how do they render the 0 as a 0? Probably in the OL, we say numbering from or something. Anybody remember how you reindex OLs? Let's see. Looking for the number 0 to be. Here's the initial value as one of these non-crossed out or grayed out ones. Maybe it's the li itself that it indexes from that way. User text, list style type. Oh, I see. There's several of these. Probably be quicker if I just ask the internet real quick for this answer. Fine, we'll do it. Because the OL is just stating that it contains an ordered list. Start. It's an attribute on the OL. What? No, they're not using that. You can use start for to say start at that point. Is there like CSS that should do this instead? There we go. Okay, so that does indeed change it. If we want 0 index, we just say start 0. So surely there is some CSS that will control that. Yeah, I've used it before, but I thought there was CSS that would manage this. List style, line height. Let's just look up list style, see if there's anything else in here. It's a shorthand property to display a bunch of stuff. Image position type. See if Stack Overflow's got something. OL start, yep. Yep, start, thanks. Start is not deprecated anymore in HTML5. Awesome. Start number doesn't automatically change based on the numbering before it. Yes, you need to specify it. Counter reset and counter increment. So you say OL li before is counter. Is there any chance that they're actually display nunning that index and they're drawing a before for it? Yep, I bet they are. The li has a before. Then there's the selection fill thing. Does this have a content? Let's go back here and see if we can get it to display the list item. So this display is overridden somewhere. Nope, it's not the display I'm after. List style type. And that's coming from tree outline. So this brings us back to decimal. No, it's not adding the dot back in again. content. That's just some extra white space they used to shove in there for that little arrow. So you see, this is, watch the arrow appear and disappear. When I toggle this. So they're saying because it's a tree, it gets an expand collapse, which is different than what this little tick gets. For some reason, they don't share that. Probably just to be very clear that it's your formatter that's doing this, just in case the page itself is taking over. Okay, I guess that just overrides none, because you might hide things. The style type should be decimal, but it's being overridden by something. Yep, the same thing. So it has no effect. What the heck? How are they doing this? User select on the text. These are all inherited things from some shadow DOM. That's not going to make this complicated at all. Where's our UL? OL. I just lost it. And we got OLs inside of OLs. Is it a shadow root for this whole? Just for this thing here is a shadow root. So this thing here is a single custom component with a shadow root. I guess. Or at least it's got a shadow root. I mean, it's obviously not a custom component because it's called a div and a span. Why did they put a shadow root there? With a whole bunch of custom CSS that we're going to handle just for this. Nope, I don't get it. The OL then has the LI, and then, so here's an LI, and there's an OL inside of it. This is an OL here. Oh, that doesn't even have any number on it. It's an ordered list, but it's not numbered, I guess. Right? Because this is the only property of data. It's like it's the header, in fact. And then there's an OL directly inside the OL? Aren't LIs supposed to appear instead of OLs? Are you allowed to just stack an OL inside of an OL? That seems weird to me. Still no helpful hints about what they're even doing in here. I mean, I'm glad I figured out how to debug the debugger, but I don't know if there's any actual benefit from this. Oh, here it is. Here it is. There's a span with title 0. So they made a span, colon, and then they put the object inside of it. And this is where the expandable bit is. So they are actually rendering the 0 as a span. They're making a row, name and value, and they're doing a particularly styled name, a different styled separator, and then an object. And then inside of there, they then generate a new shadow root, probably to let us render our own custom expandable section. Okay. I don't render the UI icon. They render that. Custom expand icon must be the CSS to say, hey, here's the little half grayed out garbage. And then they stick the 2 strings in here. So those correspond to where I just rendered the class name and then where I rendered the size equals string. But I haven't expanded it yet. And then as soon as I expand it, now we get some more content. There's a second div after this first div. So I didn't render the div. I did render a div, but I didn't add these classes to it. They added the classes to it. They inserted a new element before it for the icon. And then when I expand the body, I return 2 divs. No, I returned two objects, and the objects are rendered as divs. And this is rendered as if it's custom, but it's not. Shadow open just for, what is this? What does this shadow root here do? The whole thing? Why are they different? There's a second shadow root. There's two shadow DOMs in here. This has got to be stupid expensive to render. It's just the word object. Every once in a while I worry about, that I'm throwing too many DOM elements in these pages. But then you don't have to feel bad. Just look at something, Chrome gave us. And all this crap. Look at this. Every single one of these has clones of all the styles. unless we want to try and render the object directly. Let's just see what that does. We make a div. It's got one span, two span, and then the object. The object is probably wrapped in a div, so we may want to unwrap that. I'm not yet sure. But we're going to say div.append for all this junk here. This needs a comma. Thank you for reminding me. And let's retry that. This is probably going to be awful. I am prepared. That's not awful. Of course, it doesn't inherit the styles because Shadow DOM is just, you know, it's just browser for screw you and your styling problems. Did it keep the class name? No, it threw away the class names. It didn't even keep them. It just said, whatever. So what if you put a class on there? It's not important. It's not my problem. Oh, you jerk. Okay, so the way that they must inherit this is that they say the entire row, key, colon, value, is actually part of the header of the child object. So we have to propagate the key down to the child. And everything that renders has to say, do I have a key? Okay, great. Let me render the key first. Then go ahead and render myself. So probably this can be done in the parent, except the parent would then have to inspect this and investigate and figure out how to insert a key. Let's see, headers. I guess every implementation is either going to return null. Let's see who calls header. Yeah, it's going to return not null, and I guess we just want to insert in here a key if we have one. So something like header, and then if config.has key. Yeah, I know, this won't compile. We're going to do header.prepend. And then since it's actually just going to junk our stuff our styles anyway, and just give us this unstyled JSON-ML. What's the point of having JSON-ML if you're just going to throw it away? Whatever, doesn't matter. We're just going to say, let's put the key like that. I guess we could go a little further here and ask the browser, okay, so normally how do you style that colon? Like this one here. How should that separator be styled? And it white space pre, I guess we could grab that. I don't know how it's getting the white space after it. Let's look for the box layout for it. Nope, that's not it. That's it. 13.25 pixels wide. Okay, why? That seems to be implicit, probably because of whatever. It's just colon space. Okay, we can just do colon space for the time being. Whatever. Okay, so let's change the signature here to be a JS object because I think that has get, and then we'll have to create this prepend method. No, it does not. Has own property? Sure. Get. I mean, we can make it a JS property map instead. That'd probably be easier. Oh, it didn't import yet. Okay, so that more or less works. Now we need to jump up to the definition, change it to be, hey, there's just a bag of properties in here. Maybe we could establish a convention for our own stuff, but it sure looks like the browser will always give us the same config setup here. Null, that is to say. And then we can just pass around whatever it is we want to pass around. We should only have this one implementation that matters. Something is still not compiling. Prepend. Okay, we gotta define this prepend. So the way we built our other methods is that we just say, hey, go ahead and just append this as an array. So we'll make this a JS overlay. And it's going to take some prepend. Oops, what dumb thing did I do here? Oh, it's just a string array. Okay. I just need to explain to it that this is a string array. We're going to take in our JSON markup. So just like this thing here, except we now have to insert it. We have to splice it into the second position. So recall JSON markup. The first element is the tag name. The second element is the attributes we always get from position 1. We always create one of these, so all these element helpers where you pass in a tag name, it passes the string, and then it calls of with the tag name and an empty object, because the attributes start off as empty. And then I don't know how I changed that. And then we allow you to change styles by tweaking the style attribute or replacing the style attribute. And in theory, we are replacing other attributes, but that didn't seem to work. I'm not 100% that Chrome screwed us there, but you know, it is in its nature to do so. So whatever. Okay, so we'll return this. This needs to be a final method and needs to return JSON markup. Prepend now needs to splice. We need to say index is what? 2. How many is children.length? Is this right? Let's try this real quickly. Just experiment in the browser. So if I've got div empty array A, B, C, and I splice 2, how many? Oh, it's how many to delete. Okay, so it's always going to be 0. And then I try to put Z, Y, X. Can I type? There we go. Well, that did not work. How many? Maybe we need to specify it's going to be 3 things. A, B. Okay, clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. Inserts at index 1. Well, that's what we want to do. Insert at index 1. So it's going to be January, February. It goes right here. And don't delete anything. Splice replaces 1 element at 4. Isn't that what we just did? So splice at index 2. But this is not deleting. This is keeping things. Does this need to be an array? Can't be right. Oh, you know what's happening. Splice returns the removed content, which means after I do this, the original array has been mangled. So I say array equals this, and then I say array.splice this junk without the square brackets because it was right the first time. And then we look at array now, and now it's Z, Y, X, A, B, C. Okay, perfect. Did I really put an array in there? I meant an object. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Splice takes 2, 0, and then children. And that will insert those items in there. And what's your problem here? We're just going to cast it to a string. So now, by inserting this in every header we see, we now need every formatter to say, hey, I'm getting ready to render a child. Here is the key I want you to use. Make sure the arrow goes before the key. If you don't specify one, I won't make room for you. You got to figure it out for yourself. So now the list formatter, which is going to be soon the collection formatter, doesn't need this junk here since it doesn't work anyway. We're just back to that. But we put the key in here. Like that. So now we have the index in here in the key. We should make a utility for this that makes it easier. And then when that propagates into this next one here, I know where my code is. Here we go. We say, okay, we'll render the child, grab the key, prepend key : before the content you just rendered. Because we still want the render to decide who creates the element. We just want to add a little content before. You know, this may start making more sense. Oops, gotta recompile. About why those other formatters are doing the things they're doing. I still think I like ours better, but I at least understand some of their weird decisions. I still don't get this, cannot find context. All right, what you got here? Data, sub-0. It's now completely lost how to use this. Cannot use init operator to search for key in undefined. Oh, we got to make sure that it's actually defined first. Okay, there we go. Oh my goodness, it's almost noon. How long have we been on for? Hour and a half. Okay, well, sure only feels like an hour and a half. Okay, back to unbroken. Oops, and I hit continue because I'm dumb. There we go. So array list expand 0, 2, 5. Whoops. 1 is here. Because I guess we're not rendering divs. 1, 2, 3 is where? There's no entry for 3. I guess we need to hijack primitive creation now too. Because it's not gonna propagate that. There's some kind of magical proxy in here that's gonna render these things. I would really like to have access to that and figure out what it is they're passing as their configs to see if we can, you know, get some help with that. So this is now probably why we need to go back to our original implementation that we saw. Let's see. This is not for GWT. This is for closure. This is for GWT. And see how they're doing primitives, because now is why I'm guessing we have to do their, hey, it's a number. Let's render just a plain old number. Yeah, here's why we got to do it. So we have to have something that says, I actually know how to render basic primitives. We can no longer delegate to the browser if we want our keys to show up properly. Which means when you get down to a JSON array, we are still going to have to replace it with our own stuff. So that suggests to me, we have the box formatter helper already, which says how to do these things. We have the array formatter. We want to remove the special case for this. And now we will allow ourselves to render arrays, because now this counts as everything. Any kind of an array we now can render. We do need to get the config in here and not render ULs anymore. So this is now a div. And then we need to get the key in to say, we're just going to straight append the object like this. And then we're going to do the key thing here. I lost it. That's boxed list. We should try switching to name instead, just in case there's some magic about name. And then by virtue of doing that, it'll propagate to the next one down, and now we need a formatter for primitives. Okay, so here's the part where we used to return null, and now we're just going to return we still want this header logic. Let's make that into a method so we can reuse it. And now we can say, okay, we're going to go ahead and render this as rendered header, because we're still rendering a header here. It's just that the header is the thing. And now we're just going to say, like, return. I guess we don't return it. We could return it. That might be helpful. Because now we can say prepend key, if there is one, take the config, draw a div. Nope, don't create a new method called div. Use, there we go. Append. All right, I'm guessing we're going to murder some formatting by doing this, but now we will stick keys in front of nulls and in front of primitives. We've already got arrays covered. It's just objects left we gotta handle. And things like byte buffers and junk like that. Array buffers, sorry. All right, how terrible is this? It's flat, so that's disgusting. We need to get a little bit of indenting at each level. That's not ideal. This should be a div, right? Oh, it's doing it here too. What's going on there? Let's look at the DOM for that. Custom expandable section, great. Here's a whole thing as a div. Why is that next element going over there? That one. Why are you over there? It's like float left. Why is each one wrapped in a span instead of wrapped in a div? Yeah, so I made a div and they wrapped it up in a span. I returned this span with e : contents, and somehow they rewrapped that in a div. Sorry, a span. I returned the div. They rewrapped in a span before putting it in this whole object div, which is all of the contents of the array list, right? Just to double check that I didn't add any other spans on the way in for this list formatter. We had a div here for each thing. I don't do anything for the children. The header is a div. And then on the way out, I just return that body. We never render children. We can't return null here. This is a bug. Oops, that's not what I meant. but we will just return false if you've got a null or something, so this shouldn't even be possible. Those should all just blow up before they even got here. So where the heck did these spans come from? Because I didn't used to do that. I don't think I'm even drawing spans anywhere in here. Let's make sure I'm not doing something dumb. Let's go to our JSON markup. First of all, we got to get rid of. Oh, we already got rid of it. Good. So who's calling span? Someone's calling span. Oh no, it's unused. Nobody's calling span, so something else is deciding. You know, it'd be helpful if I made a span, and it's inside of DevTools is deciding. This thing here needs a span on it. So here's the expand icon before my key : value. It all got wrapped in a single div, which is what I created. They put extra headers on it so that it can expand collapse. But why does this expand collapse like this with children below it? With this still right next to it. It's like they float lefted it. Should you float left? Should spans float left? I guess so. If you got a div inside of a span, I guess that's the behavior it's going to have functionally. Let me get rid of that selection. It's irritating me. Custom expandable section. So why is there a div on it, or a span on it? Okay, so this display inline flex is not helping. There should be an arrow in front of this one. Oh, but it has no children, therefore it doesn't have anything to render to say to expand. Oh, this is irritating. Okay, so in short, this works. I think I'm going to cut this off here, though, and say this idea works. We can build good APIs around it, but it's a crap runtime. The actual how they consume it is not easy to make anything that's gonna make sense. I would love to spend a little more time with some of the other examples and figure out how they work, but unfortunately none of them are hosted anymore that they actually can do anything. You have to download and build each one on your own, serve each one on your own. You know, GitHub Pages should make it very easy to do this, and that's not what they've decided to do. But it sure looks like it's just covered in foot guns. You know, you can't render things consistently. There's no automatic opt-in way to get your keys there. I do want to try switching from key to name because I saw at least one other formatter do that. Here's a formatter that, let's look for what configs they do. They check some types. This is the GWT specific one, so let's look at a not GWT specific one. I'm betting they render a whole bunch of junk to do this. Like all kinds of CSS, because they just have to completely replace the CSS to do this. Well, it's not happening in here. So there's just one formatter getting added here, as I understand this. I don't see other styles here anyway. There's a lot of making sure we can add and remove. I'm guessing that allows multiple formatters. Let's see if there's something here that actually does some nice styling stuff. But it is a lot more code than I would have expected, just to be able to opt in and say, hey, I'd like to render my stuff in a consistent way with, everybody else. Let's see if there's something just a little simpler out there. No, that won't really help because it's just going to return objects. It's just wrapping up objects using this special syntax here. Object. So object is obviously a magic word in a object JSON ML. You can use the word object to mean, hey, I'm going to render an object, and that means something specific. And you can pass in other stuff like configs, I think, into that. They have to be non-null. So let's try where we pass something else magical like name. I haven't seen anybody else using the word name, but just in case that's a thing, let's look everywhere for key. Let's see. It's not that one, but the other ones we're all going to replace with name. So that's checking if it's there. That's fetching it. That's assigning it, and that's assigning it. We're not going to replace that. So just as one last check to see if this convinces it to do anything different. It does. I mean, that's definitely different. No, wait. 0, 1, 2. This doesn't have keys on it. Are you serious? Just by using the word name, it has some different structure to it? Here's a span there. Okay, make this pop-up go away, please. You're not helping. Okay, here's the children. Each one of these is a span. No, these are still spans. It didn't make a difference. It's just a width or alignment thing. Custom expanded section. Why are these different? This is so irritating. Okay, so it's already rendered the child. Oh, it's probably because I collapsed it again. So if we revert this back, are we going to get the other stuff back again? We still got to get that caret back in again to say, hey, I know it's not expandable, but please indent cleanly. You got to steal however it is that they're doing that. These are rendering cleanly. These are not rendering cleanly. I just need to rewrite how arrays work. That should be fine then. And these are not respecting their key, which makes me think that the browser is saying, oh, well, let me just take care of that for you, even though I explicitly said not to return null in those cases. Maybe we need to actually test before we return. Hey, if you're rendering a primitive, we have to append it now. I seem to recall some garbage like that. That's probably what's happening here. If type of is object, then create object tag for the value. Otherwise, just make a span for it. Yeah. And they say just take the value and append it. Create a node for it right away. So they are turning it into a string right away for each child. You have to test each child and then render it directly because now you're on the hook because it's not going to be able to handle it properly. Okay. Fine. You're a jerk. Let's look at how we might do that. Because, I mean, this seems to be getting in the right direction then. Let's go back and replace all the names with the keys again. Let's see. We wrote it, we read it. Okay. So we can just replace all. and then shut it down and start it back up again. Wait for it to run in the background. It's fine now. It must have just been some sizing thing where it just decided, oh, now I'm gonna wrap instead. These are still stuck together. They don't have a key on anymore. We just figured out why that's the case. We have children rendered here. We don't have indenting. We still have to fix that. We have to render these as useful objects. We don't have that yet either. This clicking is just irritating. When you click it, scrolls, it jumps to the right thing instead. Okay, so maybe that was just nothing. It was just some sizing was just a little squirrely, causing it to break. I don't know. I am prepared to give up on this because it seems like it's going to be a lot more headache than it's worth. Maybe append object could be smart and say, hey, actually, there's a primitive here, so we're just going to go ahead and apply it directly. We probably need a do not auto box on this. No, it doesn't, because it's going to be coming from an object, and we will assume that it's not auto box to begin with, so that's safe. So what if we just said type of child lowercase object, right? Does not equal lowercase object. Then instead of appending that, we're going to append the key, which is going to be js.asPropertyMap config.get. Because you have to always have the name of what the child is going to be here. We have to always put that in. So we have to get the key. And that'll be a string. We don't have to worry about that right now, though. Just fix it. Just a straight cast will be fine. And then instead of appending an object, we're going to append really grossly key :space child toString, which we're going to rewrite because it's going to do the wrong thing sometimes. So that might be enough to say, hey, whatever you've got there, we're just going to have certain conventions we expect you to keep. That is going to break if you start crossing back and forth between formatters. If you got multiple formatters and they're trying to format each other's content. 0, 1, okay. 3. See, it's still chunking this all together. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then it renders it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. So here again, we're getting the line wrap wrong. Because those should each be a div on their own. Where's my debugger? Sorry, it's just off screen. Apologies. There we go. So what possessed you to render this garbage? I don't know. Okay, object value Boolean. So it understands that it is a Boolean, and I accidentally returned that. Oh, I didn't put a return there. That's the problem. Is that going to explain why it decided to just put spans here instead of divs? Oh, I see. I have to render a full div there. Got it. Okay, this actually is entirely my fault. No part of this is not my fault. So now we return div, line before it, and we append all of that. Right. We have to return early. We have to wrap it in a div so it's its own line, stick the key in there, and then the child. It would be really handy if we were doing this in just one place, because now we've got 2 places at least that are doing this. But we'll deal with that a little bit. I mean, we might be able to get close enough with adding the indenting to just say, okay, now it's someone like Justin's problem, who's got an eye for making it look not like boiled crap. Here we go. Okay, so now these work. This works. It's got indexes in it now. The array list, in an array list, it's empty. It needs an indent to leave room for the little expandy thing. It's really irritating that they don't let you just do that. Because now we have to assume what the width of that little marker is going to be. Hate your guts. Okay. Copy object, show as JavaScript object. Well, that did nothing. Thanks. Oh, I see. It turned off the formatter. Sort of. It only turned off the formatter at that level. You still got to deal with the formatter at this level. I don't want to store it. I want to view it as its original thing. You're not going to let me put it back, huh? Oh, what a jerk. All right. Expand, expand. We've got children inside of here. We still need indenting to make this not terrible. We still need to figure out what that size of that indent is going to be so that we can manage it, and then we've at least got some structure that we can go with. UI icon is its own thing. But we have to know when we render the header that we're not intending on rendering children, I think. It's 10 by 10 with a 4 margin, so that's 14 by, what's that, minus 14 by 8? Is that the total size? So if I put a width of 14 on this, how are you even going to tell when it's going to do that? All right, so what if we just do this to primitives? Just to be vaguely more consistent. That actually lines up. This doesn't. We have to know that the thing is not going to have a body before we even render the body. So we have to ask, hey, are you going to have a body? No? Okay, I'm just going to render it. So for primitives, we can know ahead of time. This it couldn't figure it out, probably because those are boxed objects. So we have to detect as we render it, hey, are you planning on having a child somewhere? No? Okay, then we're going to go ahead and add some indenting. That's probably manageable. Again, we should be reusing this garbage instead of what I'm doing here. So now before you render the header of something, so you ask, hey, can you render it? Great. Now we're going to put a key in front of it if necessary. If there is no key, we probably skip it. Then we have to ask, has body, we don't have the object in here. We just have the content. All right, well, we'll set that up to get the object. If has no body, then rendered header dot style. We really need an append style, but whatever. This will do for today. Okay, it's all over that it's wrong. I kind of want to move this prepend key into the JSON formatter because now it would just be the same everywhere. The JSON ML, I mean. Okay, that's not terrible. That is terrible. It's not padding it further. Is it because I don't know how padding works, or is it because it's just not descending in there because I didn't change how that works? That is an additional padding, but it's not a child of the header. Oh, come on. So when you're nesting elements, you sort of think that, okay, the children will be inside of the main thing. That way they can take advantage of the existing padding. But no, the header is a separate thing, and they are both all in one big span. So none of these things will add more padding as they get deeper. No, that's the same thing. I want to look at the second one, which is going to be a array list. Yep. So the outer div of anything planning on having children, no, if things rendering the children, needs to add depth. Probably an arbitrary depth. It could be 14 though. So if you have a body, when you render the body, should we just tack on an extra 14 there? Yeah, we can always do that. We can unconditionally do that. So now we're returning body, whatever that was. You're guaranteeing us it's not going to be empty. Style padding left 14. This is awful. It's too bad we can't use CSS classes, but apparently that's deliberate. Justin, did you just tweet that? All right. Hey, look at that, indenting. And now we need someone who can do a good job with styles to hook this up. We've got box primitives. We've got non-JavaScript primitives. We have more box primitives. We have, okay, maps are still crap. Collections are still crap. We still got to rework those. I mean, it's not like anybody uses Twitter anymore, so that's okay. All right. I'm willing to call this good enough. We still got to get fields in there. But this seems to be okay. We really need to tidy this up here, this key notation. We need to make it consistent about all the different things that are rendering. That is, I mean, obviously I don't want this to devolve into a why Twitter is terribler than it was, say, 6 months or a year ago. But that policy is gone. That was gone the night that it was introduced. It was already 404ing. They didn't even just retract it. They just deleted everything about it. They even deleted the tweets about it. And by they, I mean probably the one person who tweeted it, taking over those accounts personally. All right, we got to get these also formatting nicely, but this feels like we're in a good shape here to say that this really just needs to have, just keep using the same key syntax here. I mean, Reddit, remember when Reddit was the bad guy for all this? Reddit hasn't gotten any better. It's just that it's so much less worse. All right, I'm going to go eat some lunch, and then I'm going to come back, and I got 2 possible project candidates here, because I'm going to give up with this. I've got this proposal for JS Interop Generator to make it possible to run Generator on non-Bazel projects, because it's currently not possible to do that, just because they don't emit enough metadata to generate stuff nicely. And the second thing I've got is to get back into Jackal Maven plugin, which is over here. And I was inlining bits of the compiler so that we can control directly how the compiler does things. Let's close all this stuff over here. So that we can build our own incremental bundler. The incremental bundler is going to give us the ability to say, hey, you've got 1,000 files in your project. Each of those compiles to roughly 2 to more JavaScript files, but you only changed one Java file, and Jackal maybe recompiled everything, whatever. We're going to get that better soon. But Clojure shouldn't need to reparse every one of those files because there's no binary format for that. We can keep track of what the structure was last time and examine only the changed files through the new incremental API, which is used here. Nope, this is all the first try. This is the second try. If incremental is enabled and there was an old successful output, grab the last successful output, resolve a dependency info JSON in there, use that to revive a dependency information map, and then try to remove any entries we no longer need, like files that were recently deleted since your last build. Any add or modify will go through here then, and we'll just add new entries into there. And then if you're non-incremental, we just build all of them fresh. So this is going to minimally parse the changed files and not parse anything else. And then once you've got all those dependencies resurrected, right now we're doing the full resort all at once. So you've got 1,000 files. You've got to sort. It's a big O of n log n, which is like what? 10,000 steps, roughly, depending on how you do the math. And once you've got that sorted, then we will go ahead and bundle in that order. Just zip down the list and just append each file in order. There's still some concerns that the sort might be expensive for too many things. Whatever, we can make that itself incremental as long as it's still stable. And then there's possible concerns that actually the I/O here of just appending exactly the same files back to disk again is going to be slow. And to handle that, we can do something like, well, grab the old file you wrote, figure out the byte offset of the first change, and then just copy all that stuff from one file instead of reading from all sorts of files all over the disk. I think instead we're probably going to grab them and put them in memory or something like that, or at least assume that the browser is paging them in. I'm sorry, not the browser, the compiler's paging them in. Anyway, this should be the, hey, grab all the bundle stuff. Okay, make a new output file. Concatenate this. We're slowly inlining bits of the bundler from Clojure compiler. And then we write our output. And then I think we just need to finish the bundler here and then remove this thing here. I think that's probably all we have left. I may have accidentally left this all turned on for some testing. But yeah, that's not going to work very well if I left that all turned on. So let's see, one more, or is that it? One more. Okay, so we're just gonna build and install, make sure that this works with that one piece removed. I think I just broke something. Yep, I broke that. So we'll have to track success somehow, understand how it's tracking success, and see what we need to do here. Probably if we throw, it's going to be a failure, and that's all we need to worry about. So let's just pretend that that's the case, and then we'll come back to this later and check this. So anyway, this is another good task to work on because for very large projects, even when Jackal is fast, Clojure is slow. And I think we have the potential to gain quite a bit there, especially when Jackal we can make incremental. And that'll be a separate task someone will work on. So I'm gonna go grab some lunch. I'm gonna shut the stream down, and then when I'm back, I'll probably get back into this work. JS Interop would be more rewarding, and it's the kind of thing I need to get Google to sign off on. So it's the kind of work, the sooner I do it, the better. This I can do practically anytime because I'm not depending on other people reviewing my code. On the other hand, it is December 21st. There is zero chance anyone at Google will look at my work in the next 3 weeks. So maybe it's not such a big deal to do that now. Let's just try this real quick. Is it built and installed already? Let's grab the test project. Ready for browser refresh, it says. So the trick is, can we get away with just changing this Java file, and does it successfully incrementally run it through Clojure, or does it blow up in some awful way? So this is a terrible example because it's so tiny. But it doesn't blow up, and that's important. The incremental build here, okay, I am hungry, but whatever. The incremental build here said, okay, I've already done this recently. Let's see, the bundled.js. Here's timestamps of each build. Here's the most recent one here, which gives us the, oops, okay, I guess none of those are any good. What the heck? Synchronize from disk, reload from disk. There we go, we got new ones. Here's the most recent one, which gives us the hash, I guess it's the full path, I thought it was just the hash, where we need to go to say, hey, here's your old build, E6D4, so that is the most recent one in our build cache. E6D4. And if we want to look at the one before that, it was 3B8C. Let's see, we said E6D4, 3B8. I don't see a 3 in here. Hello world single, bundle, 3.3. I'm confused. Is the earlier one there? 3.3FC. I mean, it makes the point pretty accurately here. That here's the previous build. In the results, there's dependency info to tell you the dependent relationships between each JS file. I require these symbols here. Okay, this file over here, I require these symbols. I provide this symbol. Okay, does anybody require this symbol? Nobody requires that one, so that's a terrible example. Here's the Hello World library impl. I provide this. Does anybody require this? I require this. Okay, so this file must always be located later than the other file in the JS output. As long as only one of those changed, then we're able to say, okay, well, let's go ahead and build the new output based on that. This is the bundled.js sources. Here we go. Here's the actual bundled.js file. And so it will tell us that the impl comes here, and then because this depends on impl, this will come after it. So that's the idea anyway. We should add a little bit of logging to say, hey, I'm incremental, and here's the time I saved. So that'll be one of the other things we'll do here. And basically, what that ends up meaning is that each of the JS files you build ends up being one line in here with a little bit of documentation to say, where did I get it from? So that you can backtrack and figure out where that source came from. Because really, you don't want to be reading this junk here. And then at the end of each of these lines, you'll see that there's a little source map reference, because those source maps also will work properly. They say my source map is at this path, and my source URL pretend that I am at this path here. And it says, okay, well, if I pretend that you are at example/hello world/other impl.js Java, great. And then it says that if you lived at that file, your other JS map is right here, and that's where we'll load the map from. And that's how that loads. So then we get source maps. All right, I'm going to get some lunch, and then I'll be back in probably about an hour with kids being kids and all the fun stuff like that. So, see you soon.